Welcome to Koyunopm Project Management, the issue log. So in the last video, we completed the risk register. In this one, we're going to do the issue log. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the same template we used last time, except we're going to create a new sheet. So we're going to go to the plus sign here, click that, and open up a new sheet. And we're going to title this one the issue log. Now that we have that completed, we're going to go ahead and create a brand new register. The last one was talking about risks. This one's going to be focused on issues. And the example we're going to use in this case is the risk that we identified in the last sheet. But we'll get to that as we progress through this. So the first field we're going to add in is an issue ID number. Then we're going to add in a risk ID number, an issue category, and an issue title. So now that we've added them in, we're going to go ahead and expand the fields like we did last time. So we're going to go ahead and identify 10 unique issue ID numbers, 1 through 10. So this gives us the start of our issue log. So each issue, just like each risk, is going to have a unique ID number. So that's why we start with the issue ID number. The risk ID number just highlights if one of our risks become an issue, we want to go ahead and identify which risk it was and when it occurred. So in this case, let's assume that the risk we identified in the last sheet occurred as a 6th issue on this sheet. And so we'll identify here the risk ID number, which will be 1, because that's what it was in our risk register. The issue category, in this case, will remain the same as what it was on the risk register, and that was a test, because we had a failure in qualification. And then what was the issue title? It was a qualification failure. And what we're going to go ahead and do is extend the field just so it fits. The next fields we're going to go ahead and add in are the issue description, so a description of what the issue is. The risk owner, because in this case we had a risk owner, in some cases we may not. And the issue owner. And so the reason there may be a difference is if you're supporting a 2-year project, a 5, 10-year project, you may have people leave the project, you may have people moving within the organization. And so in this case, we're going to have 2 different people. The original risk owner on this was James DeWitt. However, that person moved on, and when this issue occurred, that new person is now going to be Melinda Parker. She'll take over to resolve this issue. So what we added in was an issue description, a risk owner, and an issue owner. And so because this issue was previously identified as a risk in our risk register, we've gone ahead and added in the issue description. And so in this case, our hardware did in fact fail qualification. The risk owner at the time that we did this initially was James DeWitt. He was the one who was managing the risk. Trying to resolve this issue now is Linda Parker, who's the test lead. The next areas we're going to add in are 3. It's going to be the predicted risk total from what we identified within the risk register, the risk mitigation plan, which is what our mitigation plan was from the risk register, and then our issue resolution plan, which is what our plan is to try to resolve this problem going forward. Predicted risk total from the prior risk was identified at 15. And then the risk mitigation plan that we identified was conduct prototype testing. If successful, progress towards development testing with the initial hardware. And then if that was successful, progress forward with qualification testing. We tried those things. Unfortunately, we still had a failure in qualification. And so now what our issue resolution plan is to confirm the test results for failure, verify that the test equipment is good, inspect the hardware for visual signs of damage. If above look good, tear the unit down and inspect each part. And then determine go forward plan at completion above steps. So that's our initial steps that we're going to take to try to go ahead and mitigate this problem. So we've gone ahead and added in the information, and you can see it's pretty difficult to read. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go up here, and we're going to go ahead and remove row 1. So we'll just delete that row. We're going to go back up to view, and we're going to freeze the panes. So freeze the top row. Okay, and that way it won't keep bouncing around as we go ahead and scroll down. So watch this. Make it easier for us to update this information. So the predicted risk total from the last risk that we identified, or the risk we were concerned about, is 15. And so we had that under risk we were tracking as a 15. So it was a red risk. It was something we were concerned about. We tried doing a mitigation strategy, unfortunately it didn't work out, and so we moved forward with our resolution plan, which is listed here. We're going to add 3 more additional areas. We're going to include the predicted risk total, the total dollar impact, and the risk reserve that we identified under the risk register. So we've added the 3 fields: predicted risk, total dollar impact, and risk reserve. And so if you remember from the risk register, our predicted risk was at 45%. The total dollar impact, if this were to occur, was at $500,000. And the risk reserve that we set aside was a calculation of that 500,000, so equals 500,000 times the 0.45. And so we set aside 225,000. Now we want to make these dollars, US dollars. So we're going to go ahead and take that. I'm going to go up here and use the dollar sign. And then we're going to get rid of the decimal places. So now we've captured our risk, predicted risk, our total dollar impact if the risk were to occur, and the risk reserve that we set aside for this. The next 2 areas we're going to include are: did we trip the risk warning, and did we trip the risk trigger? We were trying to mitigate the risk as much as possible. The risk warning was if we failed during prototype testing, and in fact we did not fail during prototype testing, so the risk warning was not tripped. However, our risk trigger was tied to development testing, and this we did in fact trip, so we failed during development testing. Those warnings worked because they told us, if one of them is going to happen, or both of them are going to happen, we have potential for qualification failure. And unfortunately, we had a development test that failed. We thought we fixed the problem. We went back in and we failed qualification as well. Okay, the next 4 fields we're going to include issue start date, expected completion date, actual completion date, and the variance. So the issue start date of this was May 16th. We had the issue occur on that date. We had the problem identified. We failed qualification. Based on our initial planning, we looked at it. We expected to complete and resolve this issue about a month later. So 6/16. We actually completed this at the beginning of June. While we still lost time, we were still able to complete this a little bit sooner than what we expected to complete. Now, qualification failures, they're not usually going to be a month long. They're probably going to be longer. But in this case, we lucked out, and so we're showing it's about a month impact. So the ECD to ACD variance is a calculation. It's ECD minus ACD. We resolved this issue 15 days sooner than we were expecting, which is a good thing. So the next 3 fields we're going to include are total schedule impact, and budget impact. For total schedule impact, it's a calculation. It's the equal sign, actual completion date, minus issue start date. It had a 16-day impact on our schedule. Okay, that was the ACD minus the issue start date. So we're saying it's about 16 days. Let's say we had 4 people working this, 8 hours a day for those 16 days. So we say equals 4 people times 8 hours equals 32. So let's say equals 32 times 16. Let's say it's a 512-hour impact on the project. It could be more, it could be a lot more. This would actually be pretty small if that was an impact. And in the budget impact, let's assume an hourly rate of $100 an hour. So we'll say equals $100 times the schedule impact. So this project, this issue caused $51,200. We'll remove the decimals. And so we're saying that's the total impact on the project. We set aside a risk reserve of $225,000. So what we can identify is the remaining risk reserve. Now that we have the remaining risk reserve, we just go ahead and do a calculation. So it's equal sign, the risk reserve that we had captured for this particular risk of 225 minus the actual budget impact that we believe impacted the project. So we still have a reserve of $173,000 left on the project for this risk. That may be funding we don't necessarily need going forward. But it could also be something that we're going to have to use another risk going forward for other additional issues that may crop up. Or we may have another qualification failure. So the bottom line is we're still identifying how much we have left over. Now let's imagine the schedule impact was, let's say it's 10,000 errors. Now you can see that was $1 million impact. We have just hit the remaining risk reserve. We're now overspent by $775,000. So that's obviously going to have a major impact on the project. The next field we're going to capture is the issue notes. And these are the notes that we've taken in association with this particular issue and its resolution. The test equipment was good, as too were the test results. And when we initially looked at the hardware, it looked good. However, once we tore it down, it was identified that a key part was out of tolerance and out of print. The unit was rebuilt with a new part, and the decision was made to proceed forward with repeating the qualification testing, which it subsequently did and successfully passed. So there's obviously going to be a quality control that we're going to have to implement to try to mitigate this risk going forward, so that all the parts are verified before they get sent to the build cycle. But for the sake of this issue, we've resolved it and we've successfully gone through qualification testing. Now we may want to do some additional qualification testing just to verify that it wasn't just a fluke, but in this case we've identified this as our issue notes. And so the last area we're going to include in this template is going to be the status. And for the status of this, we've gone through, we believe we've identified the issue, we resolved it, we successfully completed qualification testing, and so we can identify this issue as resolved. And this gives you a complete risk register. Now, it's a little bit big, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and shrink it again, like we did previously. Now we're going to go ahead and shrink it, and I know it's hard to read, you probably can't even read it. So we're going to go ahead and remove column A, just delete that. We've already gone ahead and captured the top and frozen those fields. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way across the top row, highlight that, and we're going to go to data, and we're going to go to filter. And now we have a filter. Now what we're going to do is take all 10 rows plus the top row, and we're going to go ahead and go to home, click all borders, and then thick box. Okay. Then we're going to go down the left hand side. I'm going to bold those. I'm going to go to the top row, and I'm going to bold those. And then we can go ahead and resize this so it's bigger again, so we can actually read it again. And now we have our issue log. So you can see we have the issue ID number, the risk ID number, an issue category, issue title, issue description, the risk owner, the issue owner, sometimes that could be the same person, the predicted risk total, the risk mitigation plan, the issue resolution plan, the predicted risk, total dollar impact, the risk reserve, risk warning, risk trigger. We've included an issue start date, and because we can't read that, we're going to extend that field just a little bit so we can see the whole thing. Expected completion date, actual completion date, ECD to ACD variance, total schedule impact, budget impact, the remaining risk reserve, issue notes, and now status. And we're going to extend that field just a little bit so that fits. And this gives you your issue log. And so now on this particular template, we have a risk register in one tab, and we have an issue log on the second tab. So the next obvious question is, well, what happens if we didn't capture the risk up front? What happens if it's an unknown risk? We did our work up front, we planned everything out really well, but it just happened to be an issue that we just completely missed from our risk register. Or worse yet, what happens if we didn't spend the time up front where we didn't plan for risk? And so this wasn't something we were tracking. So what we can do is we can go ahead and say, well, in this case, we have no risk ID to associate with. So we're just going to put NA. The issue category, this one's actually a resource risk. Resource issue, I should say. So what's the issue title? Unfortunately, we had a person leave. It was a key person on the team. We weren't expecting it, and they gave notice, and we had to figure out how to get another person involved. So in this case, the issue title is going to be, we're going to call it loss of key team member. I'm going to go ahead and wrap the text just so it's a little bit bigger. Then what's the description? We lost that key member. I mean, that's really what the issue is we had to figure out who to replace that person with. So the issue description is the loss of the primary quality team member from the team. The risk owner is NA because we didn't identify this risk initially, so that's irrelevant. So the issue owner is the quality director. It was their employee that left, and they need to find a replacement. Did we have a predicted risk total? No, so that's NA. Did we have a mitigation plan? No, that's NA. So what's our issue resolution plan? We get a quality resource and we can get them on the team, and we can go ahead and ensure that we can continue forward with the project. I'm going to increase the size of this field because we wrapped it, but you couldn't see the possible. And then the predicted risk total, that was NA. Total impact of risk, NA. Risk reserve, NA, because we didn't capture that. Risk warning tripped, NA, because we didn't identify those, or the risk trigger, that was NA as well. When did the issue occur? Let's say it was on 3/15/18. Our expected completion date is 4/15/18. The actual completion was 4/7/18. And so the ECD to ACD variance is the calculation again. So it's equals ECD minus ACD, which gives us 8 days. The total schedule impact is going to be ACD minus issue start date. So it's a 23-day impact. Did it have any impact on the project? Well, as a quality person, we were able to make do with what we had, so it really didn't impact the schedule too much. We were fortunate because there was nothing else at that time that was critical to have that quality rep. So while it was a loss for the team, we didn't actually have any activities going on, so we were fortunate there. So there's no impact there. Budget impact, no real impact there either because there's no real impact on the project. And in risk reserve remaining, we didn't spend anything. It didn't impact us in a harmful way, the budget or schedule. So the issue notes we're going to put here are, so the issue notes, the PM to touch base with team members on a regular basis to determine morale level and future goals in order to minimize loss of team members without prior notice going forward. You should be doing this as a project manager anyway. You should be touching base with your team members on a regular basis. If nothing else, it's to check on how the project's proceeding. But whenever you do meet with your team members, try to determine how they're doing. Are they frustrated? Are they angry? Are they doing okay? Are they happy? What's their morale level? What's the organizational morale level look like? How do you think that's going to impact those key members? Because when you lose key members, there can be an impact because they have to get trained, they have to be brought up to speed. There's a lot of loss associated with that. And then the status, I'll go ahead and say resolved. So you can tell from this that it doesn't matter if you captured risks up front or you didn't capture risks up front. You can still use this issue log because it's going to be applicable either way. So some of the fields may be NA, but that's okay because you can still use this to give you information. And this can also become a tool you can use going forward for lessons learned for future projects, and then apply those in the future projects as things to look out for. Thank you for watching this episode of Koyunopm Project Management. If you have questions or are interested in additional support, feel free to reach out. For additional videos, tools, and other material to include recommended reading, please visit the listed YouTube page. If you don't see a video or tool that you're interested in, send an email and request it for future edition. Once again, thank you for watching Koyunopm Project Management. Have a great day.